Reaction to his death has come in today from across the country and around the world. Tributes from Buckingham Palace in Washington, from politicians and ordinary citizens. But the reaction also reflects the life of controversy of John Diefenbaker.
I just can't imagine. I guess it'll take some time for me to get used to Parliament opening on the 9th of October without the presence of the Right Honourable Member for Prince Albert. I thought he was a great human being and a parliamentarian who understood how this place worked, not by reading the rules, but he'd absorbed it in almost 4 decades of service here. I don't think we'll see his like again around this place.
I think the main thing to be said about his regime is that he shook things up. The Tory party wasn't noted for its concern for little people. It was the party of big business. The Tories in the 20s fought against the first pension plan that the Liberals brought in, and it was Tories plus some Liberal Tories in the Tory Liberals in the Senate that defeated it. And yet, one of the first things that the John Diefenbaker government did was to raise pensions from $46 to $55 a month, and then at the end of that same Parliament raised pensions to $65 a month. In other words, the policies of the Tory party weren't necessarily sacrosanct with him.
Mr. Diefenbaker's contribution both to Parliament and this country will stand as a landmark for a very long time. Certainly his energy, his vision, and his particular contribution in the field of human rights and as a spokesman for those who really had no spokesman is unique in Canadian history. And I think that that will have to stand as a living monument to him in this country.
He was a very distinguished Canadian. He had I think, perhaps the most notable characteristic he had was that he had a abiding interest in the underdog, in the unfortunate of the world, either for those who were unfortunate for economic reasons or other reasons. He was a very sympathetic person in that sense.
For a long time, he had an important place in Canadian life. Rather controversial place too at sometimes, but I think he remained a model of not just vitality, that's given or not given, but sort of dedication to work and just keeping on for as long as you can in life.
I think he will always be lionized as a great Canadian figure in the sense of being a personality. I do not think that he will go down in history as a great prime minister. Again, because he had that great opportunity and he muffed it. With that kind of mandate, which came from every part of the country, in which people were telling him, we want change, we want new ideas, new policies, we want a completely different kind of government. All he gave us was a cult of personality, a leadership cult without leadership. He provided the country with clouds, billows of rhetoric, but not very much action, and that's his tragedy. And he knew it because he, in his memoirs and in his later interviews, he kept trying to excuse himself. He kept trying to rationalize why he hadn't done more when he was in power.
Was he a success or a failure?
I think he was a success as a human being. I think he was a failure as prime minister.
He's the kind of man you just can't believe of being anything but alive and speaking and coming out with ideas and being controversial. John Diefenbaker was a very alive person, and I just still can't believe he's dead. He was always so much part of the parliamentary scene and the national scene that he'll be very, very much missed, and it's still hard to realize he's gone.
As an elder statesman, John Diefenbaker spent much of his recent years reflecting on what he believed were lessons of the past. In the political arena, he remained as combative as ever, but in his reflections, he sought to explain more fully his philosophy and his sense of Canada. Tom Leach prepared this report on the later years of John Diefenbaker.
And I've always walked. It's the only way in which you get away from yourself and reduce tension as I know it. Walking enables one to think. And whatever problems would face me that day, I would think about them. I'd be able to offer the cabinet my ideas, never binding them in any way, but accepting a consensus in the end.
And there was always the House of Commons, the place where, he confided to friends, he spent the happiest moments of his life.
I would like Canadians to think, in the years ahead, that in my day and generation, I tried to do something for all Canadians. Never to forget those poor, those that haven't an equal opportunity in the battle of life. The farmer who was too often forgotten until my administration came into office. To establish within my own country a unity. I believe in the monarchy. That's anathema, I'd say to you. But if it hadn't been for a British monarchy, you'd have none of these rights of language that you had. In other words, Prime Minister, as I see it, has to be able not only to follow fully what's taking place in the various departments, but in addition to that, as far as the people as a whole are concerned, must be able to raise their horizons, to give them hope, to cause them to be proud to be Canadians. And that's the next thing I want to be remembered for, because I did that through the Bill of Rights, which was ridiculed and condemned for all the years that I advanced it.
John Diefenbaker was born in Ontario, but grew up in a frame shack on a windswept stretch of prairie near Saskatoon. He never tired of telling stories of the brutal winters, of the time he and his brother Elmer were lost for hours in a raging blizzard. Whenever he could, Diefenbaker took a break from his duties and returned to the West, to, as he put it, see some sky, breathe some air, and get a little closer to his maker.
There's a thrill about being in the outdoors, and here we are, not in northern Saskatchewan, about halfway up Saskatchewan. It's called northern Saskatchewan. The one part of our province and our country that is unpolluted, the air and the water, and you're back to nature. And I have an attachment to these out-of-the-way places. Gives me a new opportunity in life, a new feeling. Everything is forgotten. You can't fish and worry at the same time.